Hey there, welcome to the Weed Out, where we weed out the nonsense and talk about the ghouls in our backyard, and hopefully it relates to your backyard. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson, along as always with
Joanna May Booty. Hi, everybody.
how you doing today, Joanna?
Doing well. Thanks. I hope everyone is too.
Joanna and I have a fun little treat for you today. We're talking to a friend of ours, well, friend of the show. Joanna and I are sitting down with Michael Hitchcock of Pittsfield. He's an activist and pretty rad dude that we have known from the internet travels and local issues that we agree with. Decided to have him on because it's a great point of view. So just to give you a little background on Michael Hitchcock is the coordinator of a nonprofit with a mission to empower the working class and increase working class ownership in control of land, natural resources, government, and the economy. Such a wide mission can bring him and his organization into a lot of different kinds of spaces. And in the last year, he and his group have heavily involved in the police abolitionist space. The working class cannot be empowered if they are brutalized by police or dead at their hands. The main focus has been cooperative business development and development of cooperatively owned housing, advising other nonprofits and community groups how to make their organizations more democratically run. He's worked bullshit entry-level jobs in every sector of the economy. He spent years hitchhiking around, working on farms. He was a professional gig economy worker, actor, tutor in Brooklyn for 7 years. In these gig jobs, he would frequently find himself working at the right hand of some entrepreneurs testing policy and procedure and developing it all to enrich the entrepreneur. When he moved back up to Western Massachusetts to marry his wife, he realized he could turn these skills towards the working class instead of the entrepreneurs. That I resonate with deeply, Michael. Just a quick aside, I have a very similar story, helping people get their business off the ground, setting up SOPs. So just thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story with us and your point of view. I'm just gonna hand it over to Joanna now and carry on. First of all, how is everybody doing today? Everybody good?
Yeah.
Doing good. Thanks, Spence. Having a good day with friends, with comrades. Thanks for being here, Mike. We've read your bio, so the audience has a little idea about what you're all about, but that's just the skim off the top, I guess. So I'd love it if you could introduce yourself a bit, talk about what's important to you in your own words, and then how are you connected to Western Mass? Because we were talking before we started recording how you know my partner Caleb from years ago on the Pittsfield scene, and that's where I'm from, my hometown. So welcome, Berkshire's represent, and just kind of give us a background. And like I said, we're excited to have you. Thanks.
Oh yeah. And well, it's hard that bio is just the surface, but it did cover the surface pretty well. It's just that I grew up in abject poverty in Pittsfield. The first time I went over my middle class friend's house, I didn't even know really what middle class was. I just saw his cupboards were full of food. And I said, "Oh my God, you guys are rich." And then his parents looked on me with such shame and pity that I was taken aback and I had to pretend I didn't notice that. And, that was like almost like my first awakening to a class difference and the fact that they didn't consider themselves rich. So I've always been like plugged into the underclass, even though, I played at being a high achieving student for a bit. But I also skipped school a lot and got suspended a lot. And so I was always floating between worlds and social groups here in Pittsfield. And I got to know a lot of different lives and ways of lives. And some of my friends are like 6-7 figure people. Like one of my friends from Pittsfield turned down a $4 million a year job in Wyoming because he doesn't want to live in Wyoming. How rich do you have to be to turn down $4 million a year? As rich as that guy. So I've gotten to know, and I've also I deeply love every place I've ever lived or been. I really have a connection, and yeah, I've walked home. I lived on the hill above Big Y in Pittsfield. Some of you may know, and that's a really poor, wretched neighborhood in certain ways. But for me, it functioned as a private cul-de-sac with a view of the downtown. I took it differently living up there somehow. I really I used to walk to BCC, jog home from Walmart. I've walked home to that house from North Adams and from Stockbridge. I really feel connected to the community. I walked to Dalton and Hancock. So it's like, I feel like if you walked land, you sort of own it co-own it. I'm not planting my flags.
You're intimate with it.
Yeah, deeply. Yeah. And always, yeah. So my grandpa, this is kind of interesting. I won't get us bogged down in genealogy personally too much, but my family does represent some really interesting larger scale social movements in Pittsfield, in that my father's side of the family got to America in 1647 and were always like WASP superstars, whatever. And my grandpa on that side worked for GE as an accountant and had a prosperous life in a nice neighborhood. But my mom's side of the family, the Italians, came in that big wave in 1921. They came and they worked at GE as lowly bullshit workers, and then had to all join the army and fight on the front line. Well, my other grandpa got to be in the Navy doing accounting during wars. So it's like my mom was looked upon as kind of like a piece of crap by my WASP grandma. She didn't like that loud, unruly Italian side of the family. They thought it was beneath them. And my grandma grew up in what was considered the Black neighborhood, because the Black people and Italians were kind of shoved together on certain neighborhoods on the west side. And that, as you know, because home ownership is so precarious in poor neighborhoods and poor cities, those types of social decisions stick for years and generations. If you throw families together in one neighborhood, frequently the next generation or two are gonna be thrown together in that neighborhood. Especially Pittsfield has a deep history of redlining and forbidding Black home ownership. There's been really great research on it in the last 2 years. And so the rental properties become also focused on these poor neighborhoods. And so we kind of grow up generation after generation, getting to know my other rich friends. You get to know Pittsfield. The kids, the rich kids, I thought they were rich growing up. I didn't know there was like more levels to richness till later.
Even more richer in the Berkshires for sure.
Yeah. I learned later, like when I worked in Lenox or Stockbridge, what real wealth looked like. Shocking.
For the audience, just a couple of things. Like, I know what you mean by WASP, WASP. And this story of Pittsfield is so similar to the story we're going to, over time, show about Holyoke. And I could tell you the same story about Quincy. I could write a book on my uncles and like how all this stuff broke them down. But back to I just wanted to say, like, how anybody listening, like, why is this relevant to Chicopee or Toledo? Like, why is this relevant? It's relevant because this is class warfare. This is the caste system. And it's not like this fairy tale. This is just, it is what it is. And I learned class consciousness, thankfully, because of a friend like you, even though I'm in Quincy, right? It's not Pittsfield. It's not, we didn't know each other, but like I had the same kind of moment where I was like, oh shit, starting to see things, seeing the onion peel back. And so this is affecting us in every town and every community. Just to zoom it back, like, hey, this story is important, and it's important to listen to, especially the people hit hardest by it. And so that's just my coloring of that like point, and I will cede the microphone. But I just wanted to also have you fill in and tell us a little bit about what a WASP is.
Yeah. WASP stands for White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And basically, I would someday love to write a comedy book about like the ways of WASPs, and because there's some really funny stuff in there. In a way, it's a very dry, but basically, if you're not familiar with WASP culture, it's because it's like they're the ones who decided that when you're rich, you shouldn't show off because you keep it private, because that's for you to enjoy. And They invented philanthropy to wash their public image, and they're the ones who invented the civility politics that all three of us hate. They have a whole code of conduct and behavior. If you watch Mad Men and you know that the thing you think of as stereotypical 50s office culture, that's actually like WASP culture. That's the stuff that is when people say, it is just not done about something you've done they consider rude. That's WASP right there. That's like the phrase to socially reproduce their kind of civility control of, and it helps because
bully politics.
yeah, and couching everything in such a beautifully seemingly neutral tone, as if they're giving you this objective reality, to pretend not to be aware that they're coming from a cultural background, but just pretending it's neutral what they're saying, is very effective propaganda kind of control of other ethnicities, races, and cultures, because they're not telling you to be like them. They're saying, no, this is how the world works. And it's almost like as if they're helping you. They pat you on the head and say, attaboy, that-a-boy, when you act right. So Pilgrims, that whole mythology of the Northeast, any founding fathers stuff that's not overtly like Tea Party MAGA, any of the old school patriotic propaganda stuff from founding fathers, that's all the WASP tapestry of retelling our history. Sad, noble savages that are being decimated in the West, and we're sad about because we can pretend the part where we did it first here in Massachusetts didn't happen. That's all WASP retellings of history. There's so much more to say about it, but that's WASP. You can just think Mad Men, office culture, civility politics, and you'll be like most of the way there.
Great description, in my opinion, Mike. I just wanted to interject with like, so the ASP part, especially the Anglo-Saxon Protestant part. Yeah. So just the product, you said it, you put the words out there, but just so people who are listening are aware of the difference between like Catholics and puritanical Christian Protestants. Not all sects of Protestants are as fundamental as the ones that I left in my childhood, but we were WASPy too in a different way. And I remember one of the things that women would do, anyone actually, but women especially would do when they were correcting you, but trying to be nice, they would tell you like, I'm praying for you. And it's supposed to be like nice, but it's like one of the meanest digs that they can give you. So, and in Catholicism, I think it's a little different because of just the ways that they're raised. I don't think that they would identify the same way, but with the Spence, you'd have to weigh in here though, in terms of that stuff. I think it's like more of a Protestant puritanical thing, really.
Yeah, the Catholic, there's this like weird beef between the Catholics and the WASPs.
Yeah.
Like we throw WASP around like a slur, but it's the same shit. But we like all those WASPs, they got no style. They're Philistines, like, because Catholics, and this is just one man's opinion, we're a little more gaudy. Like it's a little more about the fucking gold, and like whenever you see an image of Jesus, he's got like this gold, like translucent halo around him, like, and that's kind of it. My family wasn't like that, but like that's just kind of the vibe versus what the WASPs are like. But like the Catholics go by the same rules too. It's white supremacy. Yeah. It goes back to Constantine, like, in the Crusades, like it's so embedded. And that's why the WASPs and the Catholics kind of say, but there's a way to act. And it's like, but you're saying the most vile shit in like the calmest of tones. And then we're the monsters for pointing out that, hey, that's a pretty monstrous take.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And thank you, Mike. I think we're a little far from where we were before, but we can get back there because I also, my grandma and my mom grew up on the west side of Pittsfield too, by Wacona Park, actually. So similar neighborhood, so not very far, but I think that connection, like when I think of the Berkshires and anywhere I've lived, thank you for sharing that you draw such wonderful experiences from places, and I feel the same way. Like Spencer said, I think our stories, or your story specifically, even from Pittsfield, resonates with so many because we do have such different classes within Massachusetts. And it's not talked about at the same way that other things are talked about. So
Never.
thank you for
Don't talk
sharing
about
about
wage.
that. Right. Don't talk about your wealth. Don't talk about money. And so that's something I think we all probably heard growing up. And
Don't ever share with anybody your personal problems. Like, it's improper to talk about like I don't know, like your grandma dying. Like, don't show that emotion out. It's very like toxic inward guilt.
When my WASP grandpa died, my grandma called me and she cried on the phone, and then she apologized for crying. And I went, you've been with this guy like 70 years. This is your whole life. I think it's natural to cry. And she just was like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, grandma. Yeah. Sorry for sharing that you're sad your husband died.
do you work with the people at Invest in Pittsfield when you're doing activism or politics in the Berkshires, Mike, ever?
I met them because when Miguel Estrella was murdered by police last March, and I have to tell you, no matter who is saying it or when, I make sure they use the word murdered, because I don't like the cleaned up language. Here's where my passion will come out. Just ignore the tears. I'm not ashamed of them, but they've changed my voice. But I'm so angry about it still. Is that people try to put it in the most neutral language, as if the police didn't murder the guy. And what happened, he was cutting himself and screaming, and a cop came with one of those bullshit co-responder program things, and they talked him down and took the knife and said, okay, good boy, go back inside. They didn't like, hey, here's a guy with a history of problems cutting himself, let's take him in or take care of him. They just sent him back inside. And then the cops came at the end of their shift without the co-responder, shift change. And cops, one of the main things they do, they don't want to just solve a problem. They want to solve it now. You get on the ground now. They don't like, now when I am like, have a violent, crazy person, like even the guy who put a broken bottle to my neck and tried to mug me, I don't try to solve it now. I like try to solve it on their schedule. They're actually having a problem. Let me give them some time and listen to them more than I talk. But cops cannot do that because they're all about the control. The occupying army stuff, which I'm taking it for a given that most of you agree, so I don't have to explain what I mean by occupying our army. But anyway, I found out that his mom had become friendly with my wife and they worked together. His mom had worked hard on providing hot meals to a lot of people during the first wave of COVID, where people were struggling so hard and there was not work to be had, especially for undocumented immigrants. They were cooking hot meals for I didn't deliver him as much as my wife did, but we were all part of that scene. But his mom was a huge part of that scene. And we didn't realize it was her son who had been murdered by police as the story came out, which I was already angry about the story before I found out this personal connection. So that shit. And she doesn't speak English very well. And there's she lives in poverty working a bullshit job, and he had a life of poverty and bullshit jobs, and like the same thing that LA police do. If you are in a room with someone on a gang, you are in a gang on their registry. It's just something, they're so stupid and lazy, and it's easier for them to just lump them all together as a gang. And actually, we should all know, I think most of the people who would listen to your show would know this, but a gang is pretty much just a like super uneducated attempt at redistribution of wealth. That's what street crime and brigandry has always been, piracy. It's just like the most uneducated but not stupid, just uneducated of the larger forces attempt at at social redistribution, and who can blame them? I have been
100%,
tempted so
100%.
many times. Yeah. I have all these crimes in the back of my head I fantasize about as like plan B. It just never comes up. But then so
what?
plan B, if everything I'm doing doesn't work out, I got a whole list
Right.
of crimes in the order to try them in, and
Well,
just
allow me to interject here, but everything in this society is a crime. Literally,
Yeah.
That's the
if
thing.
we want to find a way to crawl up your butthole as a society, i.e., our state-sanctioned violence, they can do it.
Yeah.
So, and like this just like brings me up. This is relevant to the topic. Like we got all this stuff going on with Donald Trump, right? Obviously, I'm of the mind that okay, he's just a symptom of the problem. So he should be at least not a rich guy anymore. He should have to live a normal life. Like I don't know about going to jail. I don't believe in jail, but
no, make him work at Qdoba.
Yeah, or make him be on SSI for the rest of his life. And dude, you got to go grocery shopping on your own. Like good fucking luck. Like you know what I mean? You got to be a peasant. But at the same time, I don't want that for anybody. It's it's like I try not to get into it. But so people need to understand like there is no war but class war. That's it's like there is two systems of justice. Like what happened to Miguel versus like the kid gloves they're putting a dude that stole nuclear documents. Like what did we fomented an insurrection? They want to throw you out of city council for like getting haughty with him.
Yeah.
That's why
like I'm a nobody with no power and like, oh, excuse me, I'm doing my anyways, I'm a nobody with no power and they'll want to throw me out, and like we've seen how they wanted to censor JR, our last guest, because I think it was JR. Wait, I don't want to misquote this.
it was Jose. It was actually Jose Estrada for saying the word bullshit at the end of his
bullshit.
comment.
So they wanted to like this dad, this nice guy, like, and he's just advocating for safety in his neighborhood. Let's try something different. He wasn't even like anti-shot spotter per se. He was just like, I hate that. It's just like we always spend money on cops. Like I'm just sick of it. Like a very reasonable, like working class point of view. Like throw us a bone. And it's just frankly bullshit. And then they're like talking openly into hot mics. Like Kevin Jordan's like, can we give him like detention for a week and like speak next time? It's like, are you fucking kidding? Anyways, so yeah, there's two systems of justice, and there's no war but class war.
I did feel rage in my heart listening to that recording, and I was glad you put it out. The when he said bullshit, and the city council guy said, "Whoa,
right?
Oh no." I actually wanted to flip a table. I wanted to go back in time and flip a table on him. I was so angry hearing, because after Miguel Estrella, many people were saying bullshit, fuck, in the city council.
And rightly so, honestly, Mike. And thank you for your reaction. Like, do not apologize for your reaction about Miguel, as someone even just from Pittsfield. When I heard Spencer and I wanted to even just cover that story, it's hard to talk about. It should be hard to talk about. If it's easy for you to talk about the murder of a young person, then something's wrong and our society is wrong. So I would say that your reaction is actually one that gives me hope, because we should grieve and really be angry as fuck about the police murdering a young person at the beginning of their life. And then just getting away with it without having anything happen to them.
Yeah, I have a tiny bit more to say that about.
Oh, please keep going.
But what I really felt affinity with about that city council meeting is that I decided at these city council meetings I used a low, measured, slow tone with pauses between concepts. And I said directly to the city council people, not trying to address the crowd or the media. And you've had a taste now, so just imagine I'm continuing to talk like that. But I explained to them why, when you work a bullshit job all day, every day, and you don't have enough money for any kind of like entertainments or luxuries, and you don't have any say over how your community is run because you're shut out of all decision making by the wealthy owners or the clued in, hooked in, tapped in politicians like the ones I'm speaking to here. And decisions are made about you and around you, but never with you. You have to accept a certain amount of lashing out. And I agree with them that it's bullshit, but I want you to hear what they were saying. Please translate it as if I said it. Please try to mentally take their concepts and repackage it as if I said it in the way I'm speaking now, because what they're saying is every bit as intelligent and valid. They just have every right to be angry about it. And it is so frustrating that this body and all bodies like it only can listen to people who know how to be very calm about things that hurt them, like when someone they loved is murdered by the state. That's the kind of statements I kept making to city council, because it was that or become like Punisher. It's always some extreme option. It's I can laugh or I can murder. What do you want from me? I'm so mad. So and then that whole thing, we discovered the reason we got involved in how I met Invest Pittsfield, which is what you initially asked me about, is because on the first, something didn't click about this story for people. Like, people were upset about it. ACLU came through, NAACP got involved, and then nothing was happening. And I thought that it was I thought it was because of her class position and her language barrier and her being so hurt. She's already lost in the system and interfacing with systems. It's already difficult. And now she's also, her son is dead. Mm-hmm. And this broke. I was so angry and sad because I felt like she was being ignored. So I made like every phone call that I could think of to make to get like, but I was always like, I would try not to cry because people can't hear you when you cry or yell. But sometimes I would cry. And I think my persistence and my emotional openness brought some attention back onto people, because I felt like it was disgusting and shameful that she was left without assistance in a time that should be like one of the most difficult times of her life. So anyway, between my efforts, the efforts of other people, known and unknown to me, a coalition kind of formed around her. A really great guy from ACLU was very moved to come back and work with us. And that's how I met Invest Pittsfield, because of my personal effort and my attempts at making a relationship with her, but not like a predatory vulture relationship, like just a relationship of service. Of basically, my mission statement on anything I do is like, I'm doing this because it is important that it be done. And if I don't do it, I don't think anyone else is going to do it. That's how I know whether I should be doing something or not. And for me, I didn't think she had anybody else who was going to like fight. I just didn't think there would be people who were scared to fight, people who don't know how to fight, people who didn't care enough. There just wasn't like anyone else, even though I consistently and still present myself as an imperfect choice, an imperfect ally, frequently telling the people that I'm calling that I am aware I'm not the best person to do this part, and I'm going to lean on your expertise here. I need you're drawing people in with that level of unfaked humility, which I guess is why it was persuasive to people. And that's how I met Invest on one of these early Zoom calls. And now there's a whole crazy thing about representational politics, civility politics in Pittsfield, where so I believe, as you believe, that representation matters. Completely important to have someone who looks like you and comes from your background in the halls of power, we'll call it. But also, a very waspy trick is to identify a very waspy member of an oppressed and marginalized identity and uplift them personally. So you've got it still locked down. You've just made them one of the boys. And so we're in a very interesting position where, like, I could be the most radical, compassionate, like, heartfelt advocate for something, and they could say, like, I'm speaking over people of color's lived experiences, and you're like, what? No, I'm speaking over a very affluent person who doesn't care about this issue. Oh no. And so on these original calls, I had to be very cautious. There was, like, I'm not going to name names as such, unless I want to, you know, but there's, like, one lady who's become very affluent giving diversity trainings to police. So her whole fucking livelihood is tied up in her relationship with police. There's no way she's going to be, like, for abolition or even defunding. She's just not for it. And so she's a splinter in the hand of our group, always. And I'm always biting at it. But as a white guy who sounds like I'm educated, I've got an associate's degree. I guess that's an education, but I have to be careful of my own position. So on these early calls, knowing that a lot of really beautiful and good and honest people do not know that that's a trick that is used about representational politics, and they have a heartfelt understanding of the importance of representation. So all that together in the soup, in my head, I have to be cautious on these original calls and stay more silent than I might otherwise. But that's no burden to me, because actually a lot of these activist things are about relationships and giving other people a chance to speak and develop a trust between them. They trust you enough when it's your time to speak. So I met them, but all very slowly and suspiciously, because I'm not sure who to trust in these spaces, because so many people are tied up in defending the status quo, but making it sound nicer, and putting more black trans prison guards is, you know, that old joke, more female drone pilots, all that.
Reformist and institutionalists.
Yeah.
And yes, institutions don't have power if we don't believe in them. So, like, there's a value to institutionalism. Like, I think once you commit to something, you do have to commit to it, but that doesn't mean you stop greasing the wheels or like checking out the issues. I shouldn't say greasing the wheels. It's a terrible metaphor. But I was thinking the other day about all this, and basically, when these local politicians, right, like, how do we challenge their values? And I think if we believe in institutions, right, maybe follow my logic here, right, we say to get the institutionalists, why aren't we challenging state rep McGovern or whoever, local politician, school board member, even, like, hey, as a legislative body, your job is to keep a check on the courts and the executive branch. And what falls under the executive branch? Police and law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you stumping on, I back the blue? Like, you're inherently admitting you're not going to do your fucking job. It doesn't mean you have to trash them. You don't have to be me. You don't have to be me being like, fuck them, they're a gang. Well, you know, I think you should be. But let's believe that people will have to come to where they come on their own time. So you're admitting you're not going to do your fucking job. That's wild to me. And I think we need to start challenging the politicians on that.
Yeah, agreed.
And I agree with you, Mike. Like, if you're someone working with the police and you're making a good portion of your livelihood off of kind of trainings for them and stuff, it's hard to then take a position where you'd want to take funds from them, but morally and ethically, I've questioned anyone doing that to really look within themselves. And again, identity politics, I use the example always for people who wonder, what do you mean by, like, someone who, like, a person of color who might be doing this? Ben Carson is the perfect example, in my opinion, or Candace Owens of this, where because they're a person of color, a Black person, it might be considered that maybe I should just let Ben Carson speak on certain topics. I completely disagree with that. And I know there are certain things he can speak on, but in terms of like, social justice and activism, just because that man is Black, it does not mean he has anyone, including other Black people's interests at the core of his belief system. And I think that's kind of what you were getting at there. Like that you or me or someone, other abolitionist or Spencer, we're really looking at creating a new world, imagining a new place where all people, all classes, all people of color are treated in caring ways, where a violent punitive approach to how things are done is not the way things are done. And sometimes we have these people that are put into spaces where they co-opt the ability of activists or abolitionists to even change things because we can't question them due to the color of their skin or because I'm a woman or whatever it is. And I'm sorry, but white ladies, and I say this all the time, like, I'm a white blonde woman, I can call you out on it. We are one of the worst demographics too, where it's, we think we have all the answers. And you're right. I'm coming from a place of humility. I do not have all the answers. I never will. There are other people in the room that usually have much better ideas than me. And so I love that you pointed that out too, Mike, that when we're building our community, giving others a chance to speak is huge. And especially people who may have not had a voice in the past ever before. So again, thank you for your work and the coalition that was built in Pittsfield to help Miguel's mother. Those are huge. They may seem small, but in communities like this in Western Mass or throughout the entire state, people go unnoticed all the time. Spencer's wife is a social worker. She could tell us countless stories where people are underserved and need a lot of services and don't have access to a translator, like you're saying. So I think what you did is just so important. And like you said, for us to, as a society, lack empathy and care for each other is enough to make people cry. It should be anyway. It should be enough to make us cry. But I really appreciate you saying that we're not heard when we cry or when we scream either. People need to start hearing people when they're crying or they're screaming. That's the time when they need you to hear them the most. So I know our audience may not need to hear that, but just in case, it's a big reminder that that's when you really should be trying to listen to the people in your life or anyone for that matter. That's kind of usually the the alarm that something might be wrong. So I think we really appreciate that. And like, you really kind of gave us a rundown on like local politics really quickly, but I didn't know if there's anything else you'd like to say. I know, in my opinion, I've followed the Pittsfield City Council and I used to know the mayor in North Adams. I do not know the current mayor, and I followed the council up there for a while. I'm not as familiar with South County politics, but the Berkshires are an interesting place. But I do feel that many of the meetings are very similar to the meetings we attend here in either Holyoke or Montague, where I live, or Northampton. They're different, but same flavors, same things going on. And I wonder if that's the same for that you're seeing similar stuff in the Berkshires. It sounds like mostly, but we can talk on that a little, maybe.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. To understand Pittsfield politics, you absolutely must understand that it was once a booming factory town with GE. It is not a comprehensible story without knowing that they used to have 90,000 workers coming in and out of town, living there. There was prosperous businesses all around the massive GE complex, which is like several square miles just in the middle of things. Now it's all like cool. It looks like, Soviet skateboard video territory, but it's like, I always like that industrial aesthetic because I grew up in a demolished factory town. And Pittsfield politics cannot make sense without it. Why are stores still open later on Thursdays downtown is because that was GE's payday 43 years ago. It's not there's just things like that all around Pittsfield, and you have to understand, to comprehend Pittsfield, that Jack Welch, hero of capitalism, ultimate top of the list of people I'd love to punch in the face with a time machine. He kind of invented the whole thing of like firing the shit out of everybody to please the stockholders. He sort of invented that. He's an innovator, a brave innovator in that, and he he really did a number on Pittsfield. 60,000 people left, no more like daily commuting population. You know, it really fell apart and became impoverished. But here's what's crazy about Pittsfield politics is we had a massive amount of second homeowners, emigres from the city who came for a nicer, quieter life. Still the most like well-paid teachers and a powerful teachers union because of that bubble of prosperity. The post-war, we're the only one in the world with factories. That bubble lasted longer in Pittsfield, and that made it so that even with the most like liberal, love is spoken here, kind of like Black Lives Matter. I'm trying to remember the sign that everyone put up that had there's just signs of like this real like warm and cozy liberalism, but even within that, they're all coming from the point of view of this bubble of prosperity and this thing where capital was in charge, and Jack Welch was the Muhammad of capital. He's really and so to understand Pittsfield politics, you have to understand that people grew up with that. There are some people who are evilly devoted to that version of and that economic system and that type of thought. They're devoted to it. They're irredeemable and unreachable. Fine, whatever. I'll admit that. And we can all name some, I'm sure. But then there's just a swath of people that are like kind of good-hearted, don't know any better because this is all they ever knew, and everything made sense, and all the answers were provided by the capital flow of GE. So their answers made sense for 50 years in a row, 60 years in a row of prosperity and capital flow. And it was a bubble where all these lies about capitalism can look true because it's functioning as they say it would, not like in other places. And that bubble, 60 years of a bubble, shapes minds. So then those people with their shaped minds, the people with really cushy pensions, people who were in the wealthy, not wealthy, but affluent and powerful teachers union who have just great lives and retirements, all of those people stayed. All of the poor people died or moved. All of the young people moved. So that is how the GE politics of the past feeds in to the GE politics of the present, even though GE is no more and completely discredited, and we're still dealing with environmental degradation from them that they refuse to clean up long enough for their business to fail enough to have the debts forgiven. It's so crazy, but that shaped Pittsfield politics. So you have a real strong, even in these beautiful, otherwise lovely, generous, personally nice people, there's that streak of conservatism that they know the way things should be, the way things are, and that's what they vote for. And when you say anything crazy about like direct cash assistance to the poor, police abolition, any programs like that, free public transportation, it makes people crazy. They're like, well, no, people should pay for the thing. No, we should means test everything. We can't just give assistance to everyone. And they go crazy, and they don't know any better. They're not those evil. The evil, totally devoted people to that system are very few. You could fit them all on a boat and sink it if you had the right idea. But the rest of them, there's just thousands of them. They don't know any better. And our job is to try to reach them respectfully, not spit on the turkey at Thanksgiving and call them white supremacists, but like try to reach them because they don't know any better. They literally don't. They're not faking it. And you have to understand that also to understand Pittsfield politics. So everyone is chasing that same economic bubble of prosperity that does no longer exist and can no longer exist. That bubble is gone. It's not how things function anymore, but they keep chasing it. So they got Sabic to move into Pittsfield and gave him like 10 years of tax breaks. And on like the year 9, 364th day, Sabic's like, all right, we're going. Thanks for your 10 years of tax break. These people, oh God, I'm going to make enemies here, but Milltown Capital, they come in to buy up all of Pittsfield. They're like, oh, Bosque Mountain is a public good. Let us buy it with tax breaks and we'll provide several seasonal minimum wage jobs. Okay, cool. Enrich yourself and look generous somehow. But that flies in Pittsfield politics because they are addicted to the bubble. They remember the bubble, and that is the time of happy prosperity where things made sense. And I can't blame them for trying to bring it back because they just don't understand it was a bubble and they don't understand why it's a bubble. So our job is educating them. And you can't educate somebody who you disrespect, and you can't educate someone who doesn't trust you. So you have to build relationships, trusting, loving relationships with people who say things that are hateful and terrible on the second level. They're not hateful and terrible directly, but the things and policies they promote would like lead to the immiseration and suffering of all kinds of like marginalized identity and people who are already poor. And me, Spencer, we can see easily that connection. For us, it's all the same sentence, but for them, that gap has never been filled. And they do not see why you're immediately angry when they're promoting cutting funding for some social program. You're immediately seeing the results, the second and third order, like, and that's gonna happen, and then and they don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and it makes them crazy. And you have to remember to reach them on the level where they don't know. You have to find out what is the good in what they were trying to promote. They're just trying to bring back that prosperity bubble, and they're trying to cut every dollar that they can think of that makes sense to cut. And they don't know that cutting dollars is never the path to prosperity. Jack Welch cut dollars, and GE didn't exist anymore, and Pittsfield still has PCBs. And you have to draw the lines for these people. So that's my view on Pittsfield politics, without even getting into the personalities, because the personalities create themselves within the spectrum I just laid out. You can guess the personalities. You can guess the hopeful young guy who just wanted to be smart and tell everyone the right things. He grows up into the adult who says all the right things. And you're like, why is this throwback in city council? He's talking like a boomer and he's only like 38. What's going on? And it's just, he grew up like getting praised for talking like a boomer who like memorized the GE politics that were handed down to us. It's all, and that's why our mission is so wide ranging, because this whole, you can't like know just a little portion of this tapestry. You have to like have a vision of how the whole thing is working together. So, yeah.
I think that's a good breakdown, Mike, as someone who's from Pittsfield and knows some of the sitting councilors right now, even I won't name names either. They are some well-meaning people who would disagree with all of us on a lot of things. And then there are some who aren't councilors anymore who would actually maybe agree with us on some stuff. So I think it's hard. Spencer and I have really worked at it. I think thank you for letting people know, if you are in the position of the ability to not let the anger and the frustration take over when you do speak to some people, especially if you need their respect and they're in a position of power. I also try to take that angle, Mike, usually. And when I speak, just so that they can hear me, and in case they did not hear someone else, often I change. Yeah. Also, often I change what I'm saying in council meetings after they've not listened to 2 or 3 marginalized people, to literally just say what those people said over again, because my goodness, listen, you people. So yeah. I think the breakdown of Pittsfield could be, I think it's definitely, Pittsfield is very unique within the Western Mass region for that very interesting and colorful background. But we had a lot of different mill towns and a lot of different prosperity, I think, throughout the region. So again, I think many people and I know where Spence is from in Holyoke, like I think many people can connect to that. We're trying to get back to that prosperity, and I don't think they can let go of that fight here either. In the valley, it's very similar. The focus is very much the same, like try to bring in businesses, give them tax breaks, things like that. And the cannabis industry right now is one of the big ones where there's just a new one opening up every, I don't know how often, how would you say, Spence, every week? And some towns are upset about it. But I think it's about education for sure. And then sometimes if you're angry, be angry. I don't want to police anyone. I've shown up at meetings before angry, but I like the idea of when we can speak to people so that they hear us, that we try to do so when we're able to. And you really kind of talked about a lot that you've like coalitions you've worked with and Invest in Pittsfield. I only brought up because Meg Basson came to that meeting for ShotSpotter, so I had to ask, and I knew Helen Moon was the other counselor, former counselor, that her and I had been friends years back and just in like social settings. And now she's someone who politically I typically align with. So she was someone who was very helpful in just having data she had collected on that ShotSpotter stuff going on in Pittsfield, just how much money they were wasting basically. But I'd love to hear more about, Spencer mentioned you're the co-director of the nonprofit with a mission to empower the working class. And I'd love to hear more about that and what you plan on, like what you're working with that and what you plan for the long term for your future.
Roots and Dreams and Mustard Seed.
So it's Roots and Dreams and Mustard Seed.
So working class, I try to redefine it for people. A lot of my job is about persuasion and education. And because I can't do anything alone, none of the good stuff. People don't understand that every triumph I have is a shared triumph. I'm happy to take responsibility for every failure. That's fine. I don't need to spread it around. But literally a shared triumph, anything good I've ever done. Even when I write something and I'm all alone in a room, you can't see the dozens of caring, helpful people that brought me to where I am to have this idea in the first place. I'm smarter. You ask me questions, I speak better than if I was just a lump of meat in a room somewhere talking to myself. I'm smarter because of you asking me a good question. It's just, so I believe strongly in the shared triumph of everything we do. And the working class, explaining that kind of stuff to people, getting the working class to know itself as a class, letting them know if you, me, Spencer, our rich doctor friend, and a landlord who owns multiple properties are all in a room discussing housing policy, that landlord is going to have a position dictated by his class prosperity that may or may not align with our position, but definitely counts on our oppression, our financial oppression. We are the main breadwinners of our landlords' houses. They're counting on us.
And those that have a mortgage,
yeah,
your landlord's the bank, because they can just come say, you got 3 months to get out.
Yeah.
And you owe us money still.
So I try to teach people or converse with people and help them understand for themselves that the working class is everybody who doesn't own stuff. No bosses, no landlords. Everybody else. If you're retired, if you're a criminal, if you're a student, if you work if you're a librarian, a secretary, a barista, if you work as a truck driver or a coal miner, we all are the working class, regardless of what some idiots are trying to promote now. It's all of us who don't own shit are the working class. If you're disabled, otherwise can't work, all of us, we're in that same boat of not owning stuff and not making decisions about stuff. So whatever levers we can identify that can help us wrest some level of control back to the working class, because honestly, think of it this way: if us three and Elon Musk were washed on a desert island, like we would have to agree on what we do next.
To him.
We would have to.
him, you mean? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, we could eat him. I don't care. But but we would have to like kind of agree on what we do.
Oh, for sure.
And if we had like a bus crash, so it's the same thing, but it's 20 people surviving together. If 9 people strongly believe something, we couldn't just say, well, fuck you, 11 of us believe this. We'd have to like coalition build and compromise with that group. So those values are easier to understand than this abstract political coalition building, but they're the same idea, is that we want to find ways to make our world more closely match those 2 hypotheticals, which makes sense to everybody. There's no reason. Another one I use for people is, I really liked the show The Expanse, the science fiction show, and so did like 75,000 other people really liked it, and it got canceled. And we're like, hey, we'll pay for it. Let's fundraise for it. No, it's canceled. And then Jeff Bezos is like, I like The Expanse. It's back on. Now, why in the desert island situation, why would his will have so much more power than ours? It's kind of stupid. But here, everyone says, well, of course he owns it. And that is a thought terminating cliche, as the guys on Citations Needed like to call it. Oh, he owns it. Like, oh, no more thinking, no more talking. He owns it. Okay, that's it. And that is fundamentally undemocratic. So that's the basis of our work. Whatever we're doing, however we're communicating it to other people, our work is about finding ways to wrest some of that control back to a more sensible division of control, and to educate people about why that control is important and necessary. And, for the long term, I don't think worker-owned cooperative businesses are like the end goal, because mostly you would be tempted to exploit yourself to keep up with capitalism, or to make money. You just be your own boss, which is cool, but it also, under capitalism, all it does is make you be your own dickhead boss, because you got to keep up with other businesses who can undercut you. So there needs to be other changes that are not in the cooperative business world concurrently, and within the cooperative business world, that training, the thought of ownership, how to split up resources and control them, is the kind of thought we need in our politics. Like, some people think like we got to vote for a certain person who's going to make good decisions for us, or whatever. But if you have owned or co-owned a cooperative business, like, tax money is actually a decision, not a dictate. It's like something where we want to funnel money to what's important to us. And what is important to us is very different than what money is spent on now. And police and military are the 2 big funnels that you can throw excess into to keep most of the working class poor and desperate. So we keep doing the stupid jobs to keep the profits turning. So I think I busted to my super long-term goals, which are still abstract, but my medium long-term goals, I would like to have a sustainable transportation concern, and a child care concern, and a temporary / gig worker concern, all running like sustainably and well, and setting up cooperatively owned properties. That's like our medium goal, because then, when we have a meeting, it's important to us to make sure that people can have food, transportation, and childcare. And that's the things you need to do stuff. You need to be able to get there. You need to be fed. You can't learn if you're hungry, or you can. I did it, but it sucks sometimes. And if you're worried about your kids, I mean, that's just so providing those things is cool, but philanthropy and charity suck ultimately, because they preserve the relationship between those who have and what there is to have. The same people are still in charge under philanthropy. So we do believe in giving people the stuff they need, but we're also, any program we're involved in that gives stuff to people for what they need, we actually, on our long-term goals, want to create a program that allows these same recipients to own the stuff they're providing. Like we're involved with a free food market on that's very much donation based, but also has relationships with local farms, and there's free food going out every week. That's cool. And there's a lot of money in that from like philanthropical granting institutions, but that would never solve the problem of hunger. Even though we could get happy and prosperous just concentrating on that. But what we really want to do is take these same supply lines and acquire them up and down the supply lines so that these same people are now owning and controlling the production and distribution of that food. And we want to bring in like regular ass middle class people into that system, provide something of worth, because just like making a new pyramid with the currently poor on top isn't going to solve anything either. We want all people, even like your conservative dipshit uncle, all people to own the food supply. There is no sense in that being privately owned. It is stupid. What if
you are preaching to the choir? Like I'm a butcher, like, and a food sourcer by trade. Like that's, and I worked in restaurants, so I've also worked in the like luxury side, you know. So like I've seen all of these things, and yeah, yes, everybody's right. But just one thing: do I have to live anywhere near my white supremacist and denial father? Like I'm trying to be like really snarky, but like some of us need our peace. Like I wanted to be fed, I wanted to be housed, and I feel this way about even the ghouliest of ghouls, like Donald Trump, whoever, Lindsey Graham, any of these fucks. Like I don't want anything bad to happen to them, you know. But like at the same time, just make them not ruin our lives, you know. Can we do that? Yeah. But also, can I just, like, I want my dad to be fed, but I don't have to be anywhere near him, do I?
Yeah. I think that every town can have its little MAGA house for everyone to prosperously live free and live free or die in their little MAGA house, and it's fine, and we know where it is, and we can plant like
we can send the emissaries, the people that are patient, like you know, the normies in my life. Like Bridget's not my spouse is not a normie at all, but she's a wonderful person. She's a great emissary. She like is very good at communicating. That's what she's trained to do. She's kind of an abolitionist social worker. I shouldn't identify her as that. I feel like because she's always pointing out like the problem that's like staring social work right in the eye. It's like there's a splinter in her eye. It's like it's kind of us. Like we're kind of the baddies in a way. Like we are basically cops, but like it's itchy. You know what I mean? It's like it's a real fuzzy area, and you can do great harm.
Yeah.
And do by mistake because they're biased, because of this, because of that, because the system kind of forces them to go that way. And that's where you're saying childcare. I think of social work and DCF and elder care and all the things, because care doesn't just mean little kids. It also means your elders, your brother, your sister. You know, you can get up in age. Like it's very possible. You know, my parents are gone, but my sisters will still be alive, right? So it's you know, there's possibility we need to lean on one another. I mean, hopefully we're all good, but like can't predict the future, and that's what a lot of Americans are going through. So food and healthcare and shelter, and it would just be cheap. I like the whole thing with insurance, car insurance. It's like we all need it. Why can't we all just like pool together? Just be like, hey, there's a pot. I don't understand. Like, and then everything's good. You drive a car, you pay. I have the car on the road. I'm like, yeah, we should get away from cars too. Like, I mean, as a truck driver for a living currently, it's yes, please less solo cars on the road. Like more like just efficient use of the four wheels, like the tires alone. Like how often you have to change tires and shit. Like driving a truck, you realize, oh shit, we burnt the tires like pretty quick, and that's a resource, right? It's all just very frustrating, and I wish there was more public transport and people could work where they live. You know, like why everybody in Holyoke either like is barely getting by, maybe has some shit job in Holyoke, or they work from home because they're like the gentrifying people from wherever. I'm one of them, I guess. But like I'm working class, so I think I'm not the worst, but I think about that, that's why we want to like uplift people in Holyoke that aren't me, and I just want to follow up that earlier you apologized for like getting a little misty. And we don't tone police here.
Yeah.
So, crying or feeling the way you feel, it's genuine, and it's a way to communicate the importance. And that's also kind of why like I yell at Kevin Jourdain indirectly at council meetings, because it's kind of like, hey, white man to white man, like I hate you. I shouldn't say I hate. I don't hate him. I hate what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Really fucking dislike it. I came here to talk about something else, but like your fucking behavior has been abhorrent for the last 15 minutes. Like, and it's not just you, it's everybody. But like, somebody like another counselor, whoever, like that's just a more neutral character. Like I will always be civil to like Juan, my counselor, because he's civil to me. And we can also have deeper conversations about the more complex issues. I mean, he's just one man representing one ward, right? And I don't think I'm bootlicking him here. I just think like that's somebody that's like, yeah, we can have measured, like you're saying. I'll talk to him because that's the most efficient way to get shit done, right? Like, who wants to make this a big thing? Like, but some motherfuckers, I feel like this is just my opinion. And since we don't tone police the weed out, that's kind of the perfect get out of jail free card here. We truly are Elon Musk's Twitter, but we just don't platform fascists.
No, we platform people like this wonderful Michael Hitchcock, who was just
so please like show your emotion. It's important. Growing up as a cis white guy, like being told boys don't cry, and maybe not even by your own family, but just by media, by other people's parents. Like my parents weren't so bad about that. They kind of were like that with my sisters too. Like nobody cry, show no pain,
Yeah.
That was kind of the lesson at home. So like my sisters kind of lived under that too. So I don't think it was gendered in my house, but yeah, other people's families would be like, yeah, oh, you skinned your knee.
Yeah.
As a kid, I remember getting made fun of for wearing a helmet.
On your bike or just generally?
Like I was some some liberal would wear a helmet because that's when like helmets started becoming like normal. Like now I see people riding bikes. Like it's weird when I don't see somebody wear a helmet.
Yeah.
Anyways, you're wonderful, and I want you to never feel anyway and never have to apologize unless yeah, I guess unless it's a scenario that actually calls for it. You showing who you are is definitely not one of those here anyways.
Yeah, thanks. I only mostly I'm just sorry that it's hard to understand when someone's choked up because I'm not speaking as clearly, and also that some people just still find it difficult to hear. But I think you're right. I think people are getting more open about it anyway.
Just some
gotta break down that waspy shit. That's the thing. It's about civility politics at the end of the day. Like if somebody's angry, even like I don't know what's a really gross ghoul like we see like Nick Fuentes or one of these people, like really gross people you see on the internet. They're just like you can tell they're seething. Jordan Peterson seething with rage underneath. It's like, dude, I want to know what's making you angry. Let's figure it out. Like, I mean, I don't really want to work with you, but I want you to find out what's making you this fucking angry. And it's like this weird dichotomy of holding it back, but also having rage.
Yeah.
So it's good not to do that.
I do think it's changing in terms of how people accept emotions, but as a woman who cries a lot when things are upsetting or frustrating, especially when I'm angry, I do thank you both for the point where it is hard to be heard. And Mike, you really said that a few times. People will discredit me as just being like a young, sad little foolish thing because I'm crying. And sometimes it's over something really important, or I'm just incredibly angry and that's why I'm fucking crying. I have everything I can say behind me, but that's just how I react to anger sometimes or sadness. Sometimes for me, it's a release. I think people need to recognize that in society overall, like crying is a release of your body's emotions, and it doesn't always have to mean that, it doesn't discredit anything that the person who is speaking is saying. So thank you both for pointing that out. And thank you for speaking on the importance of workers controlling not only their own environments, having co-housing where, like, everyone's a democratic vote because you're all in with the same amount. You own the property together. Co-owned housing would be a wonderful thing in Pittsfield. But then having control over the means of distribution and production. So owning farms, owning plants, distribution centers where you're getting the food out to each other in the Berkshires and most of the Western Mass areas, especially Franklin, Berkshire, and some of Hampshire, depending on the counties, we're right to farm communities. So I'm a big punk rock gardener, and I think it is really punk rock to be a gardener, to grow your own food, to distribute that food out. I think it's so great that you're uplifting people in these ways, and I really look forward to what you're going to be doing in the future personally. So you better keep telling me about it.
Thank you. I really don't want to leave out the fact that, like, it's our partnerships that are doing the work. It's not just us. We're actually very small and powerless in some ways. Our whole gift is in persuasion and connection building. There's a whole cast of characters and other organizations that are working very hard individually and as groups. So it's not just us. I just feel like I don't want anyone to think it's like me doing everything.
Oh, and if you'd like to give those orgs a shout out, or if you'd like to have us like give any like when we post the podcast, we could put links to different organizations that you think would be good for people to coalition build with, or we can just link it to you. But thank you for pointing out that it takes a village, coalition building, a community. That's why Spencer and I try to connect to people all over Western Mass and the state to build those relationships, like you said, and the trust. So if we reach out to Michael in Pittsfield or our friends over here in Greenfield, we can all kind of work together on similar shared values. And hopefully, again, even though we're trying to imagine new ways and new systems, it's really hard when you don't have that built-in coalition to kind of help you do so, because no one person will have all the right ideas, and it should be a democratic process.
Yeah. So yeah, look us up, Roots and Dreams and Mustard Seeds. And my wife is in charge a lot of the intra-organizational relationships. That's one of the roles she's like really excellent at and happened to fall into. It's a good confluence of, and so if you sign up for our newsletter, hey, I'm not like pitching a newsletter like a jerk off to all your listeners. I'm just saying that literally if you did sign up for our newsletter, she's really, really extremely good at sharing credit and uplifting people who have done work. And so all of the information is there in our colorful little website. I have been told it looks like a Pinterest board. She's in charge of all that.
Wonderful.
So, like,
we can share that then, Mike, and just send people there, but that would be awesome.
Yeah. Poke around there, and when you see stuff you're interested in, I don't know who's listening right now, but anything that you're interested in, or if you just need to work through ideas, reach out to us because we're accessible. And I am very diligent about making sure to help people find the people they should be working with. Like if you're asking me about a certain thing, I know who knows more than me about different stuff. That's like part of my job. And sometimes it is me who knows. There's like a lot of high level abstract stuff that I'm probably like the authority on, but there's so much other stuff. One of the things I always tell people is the manager is just another worker in our model. Like that's just a whole set of skills. That's not a thing that makes anyone better than anyone. It's just like management is a job.
Right.
It's not a divine right.
No, some of us are just better at herding the cats than others, and some of us are better at other jobs. That's just how it goes. Right. You're totally right. We all have our own role to play, I think. And that's really important to remember.
So anyone who reaches out to us, I'm sorry, Spencer, go on.
full disclosure, I was terrible at managing. Terrible.
Yeah,
Maybe it
that's
was some
beautiful that you
areas
know
I
it.
was in. Maybe, but like, listen, if you can't pitch, you can't pitch, right? But but if you can hit a baseball, you can still be on the baseball team. Like pitch. And I don't know. Maybe it's capitalism, maybe it's, maybe I was just overworked. Who knows? But, shout out to anybody that can lead. I'm your man for I like doing the grunt work, whether it's, talking into the microphone or it's lifting things up and putting them down.
Hey, you'll like this about us is anybody who's a leader in our little organization, which right now there's like not very many of us, but we are all expected and dedicated to the idea that we should be spending some of our time picking things up and putting them down, or being on the phone. Like there are no end to the amount of like disturbed, homeless, drug addicted, struggling with poverty, frontline tragedies that we're all like greeting by their first name as dignified human beings worthy of respect. There's like some amount of our time is spent right on the front line, and that will always be what we do. It's important because you can't sit in your office and make money and make decisions about these things. You have to make decisions with. So if all that together gets people anything you're interested in our website, reach out, because we will try to hook you up with the right people to work on your interest with. Even if it's not us, we don't care. We share credit and we share glory, and we try to share resources.
That's awesome, Mike, and that's how it should be. We are a community, and it really goes it goes together with the person we interviewed last week, JR, similar mindset. We all are here in Western Mass. We have different abilities, different groups we work with, different things we know, but we can work together. It may not be with each other exactly, but there may be the fact that you're willing to connect people with other groups. I would say the same to people in the Pioneer Valley if they feel they have that need to reach out to us, and I would be happy to do the same. But thank you for saying that you would do that, Mike. It's more and more people that Spencer and I meet would be willing to do that for each other. And I know that sometimes it seems like we live in a world where people don't want to take care of each other. And for us, it's important to be platforming people like yourself and others that we are having on the podcast, and platforming ideas that let people know, like you said, through education, that we can imagine a different world. We can change the systems. We can change these things that we're doing. It's hard. Yes, change is scary, but it happens no matter what. So we can maybe have some like oversight over it. And you've just really talked about so many things, and we're so thankful to continually meet. And I hope that this gives the audience some hope, because we keep meeting people like yourself in this area that are here for the working class. You're here, and the working class, like you said, means everyone. If you're not working and you're on disability, you're on state aid, like you are still part of this community. We want to hear you. You have a voice. We would always treat you with respect and dignity. I'm speaking for Spencer here, but he would agree with me completely. And I just guess, Mike, if there's anything else you'd like to say to the audience, well, I would love to give you that time, but I will make sure to share all of the stuff for the audience on our website. So when they go to this podcast, they can go to theweedout.com, they can subscribe to your newsletter and learn more about your organization.
I guess let's not waste the golden opportunity to give a final thought. Thank you very much. Is that if whoever is listening, I can't imagine you where you are and what you're doing, but there's something that made you listen this long, something that makes you care about some of the things we care about. And our whole culture is set up so that you think that the only thing you can do is what you can do. You got to make these positive changes in yourself and where you can reach. And that is good and true, whatever. But really, this whole system, the people who own and control it they're not working alone and isolated. They are working together because they all have the same interests in protecting the status quo that keeps feeding them profits. And anything you hear about clean your room first, since we mentioned Jordan Peterson, sure, he's right. A clean room, it's helpful for thinking, but if it ends there with your individual action, you have not threatened the status quo at all. What the status quo is afraid of, and Grapes of Wrath has a little passage. If I still had my copy, I'd read it out loud and cry. But basically, the status quo is terrified of what happens when, to paraphrase Grapes of Wrath, then when I have a little bit of food and you have a blanket, becomes we have a little bit of food and a blanket. That's what the status quo is really terrified of. So if you have these beautiful feelings in your heart that things ought to be better, listen to that, but don't listen to it alone. Find a way to work with someone else, because that's the only way you have enough power to make those changes that have driven you to listen to like an hour and a half of talking. So that's my final thought for whoever. And yeah, I always cry at working class stuff. I cry at commie movies when they defeat the fascists and the liberals. 1900 Novecente, it's a 5.5 hour crying with the pride for my Italian communists. I'm like that. If a labor union wins, I cry. That's just one of the things I cry at. It's tragedy and working class solidarity and victory always get to me, and weddings. And I don't apologize at those times. So thanks for that final question. Yeah.
You are so welcome, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for spending this time with us. We really appreciate you giving us time out of your busy life. But part of what we're trying to do here at the Weed Out is give a platform and another media, because some people do podcasts, right? So lean into it, and we just want to get people like you out there. And when you have updates, we would love to share the updates, so maybe have you back on, or maybe do some social media stuff. I don't know, let's spitball that down the line. But let's stay in touch, and anybody has any questions or wants to get involved or whatever, I don't know, like, I'm kind of an anarchist in this way. Like, whatever you think of, there's no bad ideas. Like, it's just missed opportunities. As long as your values are true. That's always the, is this going to hurt anybody? But so yeah, we're going to share all that information as always on the weedout.com in our little notes section. So please, if you guys are ever, because we bounce around a lot, Joanna and I, and that's kind of the whole point, because sometimes you notice there's a weed over there's a weed over there. And we talked about some ghouls earlier in our local politics. Like, we don't need to say the beast that shall not be named. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's the same characters in every town, just different flavors. And so we appreciate you sharing that. We try to, I tend to be pretty cynical and crass, so I like to, like you said, like, I know where I'm weak on my flank. Like, so I need people around who will challenge that, and also bring their inherent, like, some people, just like yourself and Joanna, has a similar ability where they wear their heart on their sleeve, and it's contagious. So it's good for us hardened men, who are also, like, part of it is I wasn't taught how to, like, properly deal with big emotions for whatever reason. Doesn't really matter at this point. It's just, so I try to be around people like yourself and Joanna as well. And it's helpful, and we just really from the bottom of our heart happy to have you on, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you both so much.
You're so welcome. And thank you, Spence, for saying that about me even. And Michael, I feel the same way about you. You've moved me today multiple times. And to our listeners, I hope this moves you too. And I hope that you're well and that you just take care.
So that was our interview with Michael Hitchcock. Hope y'all found that riveting like we did. I mean, it was very moving. Really enjoy speaking with Michael and interacting with him online. He's pretty active on Twitter, but as he likes to so eloquently put it, it's not about him, it's about what's good for everybody. So he didn't plug his own social media, so I don't think it's an invitation to necessarily go engage with him, but if you want to, he's pretty good on Twitter. But he really wants to put the focus on the work and the organizing of the working class and solidarity. So that's really admirable, and his story is very touching, and it's nice to see. I don't know, Joanna's from Pittsfield, so I would love to hear your thoughts.
It was really nice to get to talk to someone who grew up near where my mom and my grandma lived, and Mike knows, like I said, he knows my partner from the real life. So Mike and I have only connected online, but it's always been incredibly pleasant. And I agree, Spencer, that was a very moving discussion. I feel similarly connected to my hometown, but this entire region. And I'm sure that Michael would say the same, like both of us. It was just really great. And I hope the audience reaches out to him or to us if they have any follow-up or just want to get involved in something and need someone to kind of help them along the way. Because I think community is so important, building connections, finding people who have the same values as you. And I hope for our audience that we're doing a service where we provide a platform for voices that you may want to connect with, people who are working on things that are important to you. And if you know of someone doing that, or if you are someone doing that in Western Mass, please reach out to us so that we can give you a similar platform.
Thank you, Joanna, very much for your thoughts. I appreciate I don't know, that was a very emotional interview and chat. It's just fascinating. It's like, I understand the scenario, but I also see it from my angle, and it's always touching, no matter whose angle we're all looking at the same thing, and that's really what's important to keep in mind. I have a hard time remembering that. I get very frustrated very easily. So I think that's a good segue, though, because I feel like it's still important to honor those feelings. Yeah. Today, I want to introduce the segment Ghoulery and Tomfoolery, and the inaugural award or notability of this is tied to our guest who's from Pittsfield, and Joanna, also from Pittsfield. So I didn't bring it up because it's a topic for a larger discussion, but we're going to post the link to this story that we're responding to. It's a pretty, on its surface, innocuous story, kind of propaganda, but just kind of like the facts of the case. So Chief Wynn, chief police of Pittsfield, who has served in the Pittsfield police in some capacity for 30 years. So that's a long time. But they're amidst a bunch of controversy. Miguel Estrella, for example, some botched rollout of body-worn cameras is the most recent one. Joanna and I have our thoughts on body-worn cameras, and we actually don't agree with their use. That's a different conversation for a different time. But even their quote-unquote progressive policies, they fumbled. So he's kind of incompetent, or the times have passed him by. Whatever. But think about this. So amid the reason I call it ghoulery and tomfoolery, because it seems innocuous. So I'm calling bullshit on the media. I'm calling bullshit on pundits. I'm calling bullshit on the general logic. Amidst a possible railroad strike where guys can't even get sick time, police, when they get in trouble, they get paid administrative leave. Everything is in their favor. They don't have to pay for their lawsuits. Their unions don't have to pay for the lawsuits. Their insurance does. And they have to do something so blatantly egregious, yada, 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 that even body cameras have not provided that accountability. So that's why we're kind of like, body cameras are useless. This all fits in. Long story short, this guy, amid all this stuff, incompetence, or doing what he's supposed to do, uphold status quo, he gets to retire, full benefits amid these controversies. He's only 53 years old. And who's the people that get called up when people like the railroad strikers strike? The police. So the police have these cushy deals with their unions, but they're the guys who break up every other union action around the country, around the world in capitalist endeavors. So why are their union benefits so great? This guy is upheld, in my opinion, an awful institution. Whether he intended to or not doesn't matter. He seems incompetent, at least from my point of view. And then he gets rewarded handsomely and he's good for the rest of his life. Nobody else has that deal. Nobody. And we pay these guys to go away sometimes. So that's why he and this story and the media and everybody that's allowed this system to fester, you get the Goulder and Tomfoolery Award of the Week. And mention. I guess it's just a mention. Because there's no real award here. Nobody wins. We all lose. But that's the mention for the week. So that's my I think we're gonna, because every week there's something. And it also gives me a chance to vent my frustration. So thanks for everybody for listening this week. I hope you enjoyed. And Joanna, did you have any? I had my rant. So do you want to add in onto this, or you're kind of playing producer Mike back there? I don't know what you would call you. It's like, well, who is Howard Stern's producer? But in this scenario,
Robin, was it Robin? I'm so
she was more in color, but you know what I mean. You're
fair.
playing in this role here. I'm sorry to take over so much, but it's kind of like a Lewis Black rant. I don't know.
I understand. I think we talked about honoring feelings. You should obviously honor your feelings. I like our new segment. As someone from Pittsfield, I just challenge people to think like Chief Wynn has worked 30 years, but 53. I mean, I'm in a union, a teachers union that does not allow for us to retire at that age. And people like Spence pointed out, the police are the first ones to shut down labor and workers' rights movements. So it all really ties back to what we were talking about today, why solidarity and coalition building and making friends with the other working class people around you so that you can build coalitions with your neighborhoods and support each other when things like police unions start pushing back during budget season and demanding outrageous pay or outrageous benefits when we, the working class, do not have the same thing. So as you leave this episode, I hope you just feel like you can reach out to us and Michael in the future, and take care.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and we look forward to interacting with y'all. As always, please like, follow, subscribe, and go to our website, check our links. We appreciate all the feedback and all the participation. Everybody's great. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.